Hello and welcome to our new GameMaker series on how to GameMaker. How to build all kinds of features in GameMaker using GameMaker for all your games. This follows on from our platformer series, which is coming to an end soon. And we're very excited to start off today by talking about how to create levels with tile sets. It's actually really easy, although it may seem complicated at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's very simple. So the first thing you need to do is to get your own tile set. So you may want to create one, you may want to go and find one on the internet. We'll put up a list here of the best sites to have a look for free assets. Once you've downloaded it, we are going to be building a level with a tile set that is based on 32 pixel squares. So you don't have to, it doesn't make a lot of difference, but if you stick to 32, then you'll just be doing exactly what we're doing. So it might make things easier for you. So the first thing to do is go and grab your tile set. My particular one, I'm going to import right now. The first thing you have to do is import it as a sprite. So let's do that. Let's create a sprite. Remember your naming conventions. We always call sprites SPR underscore, and we are going to call this level 1 tiles. We're going to import the image with a tile set, which is platformer tiles.png, and there we are. Now, there's one thing to make note of here. So here are all the tiles. These are 32 by 32 squares. You'll notice that, amongst other things, the top left 32 square is transparent and empty. In GameMaker, you always have to have the top left square empty, like this. Don't ask me why. I wasn't one of the developers. So what I had to do to this particular tile set is in Photoshop move the original top left tile, which was this one, to down here, okay? Because what I did when I first did it, I imported it and GameMaker obliterated this tile, so I was missing the tile. So the original tile set, which was a nice rectangle, I had to move this tile down here. Okay, so you may have to do that. Now, we created a sprite. It's very simple. Now we create a tile set. You'll notice in your asset browser, the tile set group, tile set folder. If you right click on this, you can create a new tile set. The tile set is basically all of the square tiles that you will be using. I guess in theory they don't have to be square, but they usually are. You'll be using to draw your level with. And the idea is to make it a lot easier, to make it more powerful, flexible, and quicker to design levels with tile sets rather than single sprites. If you had single sprites, you'd have tons of sprites and it'd be very time consuming to create a level, although it is possible. Let's call this tile set TSL, so that's our naming convention for tile sets. About level 1. Now, have a look at this. Again, like with objects, you can select a sprite. So obviously we're going to select the sprite we just created. And here we go. We've got the tile set here, but look at this. It's got a 16 by 16 grid, so we don't actually want that. We want the tile width and the tile height to be 32 by 32. Once we do that, you can actually see the tiles nicely here. And there's your empty one. Just move down there. And so that's your tile set. So that's the tile set creation done. End of story. However, we need to be able to paint these on, if you like. Move these into, draw these into the room. So in the room, let's go and take a look at the room and revisit how a room is kind of structured in GameMaker. Now in the room, as you recall, a room is made up of layers, and so far we've only really used a background layer and instances layer, and really we've probably only used one instances layer. Layers, like in Photoshop, like in any art, like in any picture, you know, you'll have layers of stuff. You'll have a background layer. You might have a mountains layer, which is less in the background. You might have a forest layer. You might have a foreground. So it's kind of built on, the whole picture's built on layers. And a lot of graphics editors are built like this. Certainly a lot of animation editors. So you can layer your story effectively and tell a better story by having things in the foreground and the background and everything in between. So if you look at the bottom here, you have different kinds of layers. Now we've used background layers, we've used instance layers. Now we're going to use tile layers. You've also got path layers, asset layers, and a folder, which is just for organization, nothing else. We don't need folders. If you had a massive game, like we'd have folders of stuff here, and in an asset browser we'd have lots of folders of folders of folders of stuff, because it's a massive game. But for our purposes, we don't need to go there right now. So let's create a new tile layer. Now, okay, here's one thing. Depending on where you click, what layer you click on, your tile layer is going to appear above that. So if I click on instances, my tile layer is going to appear above. If I click on background, it's going to appear above background. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because you can reorder these things anyway. So I'm going to put it above the background, below the instances layer. I'm going to keep my instances layer at the top, and then my tile layers, then my background. Now we do have to actually create a background here, which I'm going to do, and I probably should have done that first, but it's fine, doesn't matter. Let's do this tiles layer first, just to get it sorted, and then we'll come back to the background. So first of all, I'm going to rename it. Generally, you'll find you have to rename things all the time for default names in any software. So we'll call it, let's just call it level 1, because it's identified by the icon anyway. So let's just call it level 1. We know it's a tile layer. And if you look down below, it says no tile set. So a tile layer, as you can imagine, needs tiles on it. Where do tiles come from? A tile set. Where is our tile set? It's in our asset browser. It's in our assets. So this tile layer is saying I need a tile set to work with. So like with sprites, just hit the 3 dots, choose your tile set, which you created there. And there you have it. You now got a tile set to work with. Now I like to have these tiles in the center like this, but to be honest, it really doesn't matter. I mean, you can play around with this sort of stuff, and you can make tiles as big as your squares in the grid. I kind of like to do that, so I will shrink them a little bit until they're sort of the same size, like that. Remember your grid, like if you've forgotten how to do your grid, so that grid's up here. Grid is on because this icon is lighter right now. If I clicked it, the grid is now off, and the grid to me is actually barely visible because the alpha transparency is way down. So I'm gonna put it up a little bit so I can actually quite a lot so I can see it. I'm going to keep it the same color. I'm going to have snap to grid, and yeah, that'll do me. Now, one other thing you've got to be wary of is a couple of settings in preferences, because remember with sprites, they typically, this may or may not actually be the case. Let's see if we can drag one on. So we just select one and bring it on. Yeah, so that's fine. If it does appear like it's across a line and not perfectly fitting in the box, then you may just have to change your settings in the Sprite Editor. So with Sprite Editor, I changed these before actually to default my sprite origin to top left and to default my sprite width and height to 32 by 32. I think before it was middle center, so possibly that these were in this kind of on the lines rather than in the box. So you may have to do that, just be aware of that. Now the next thing you've got to do is literally draw your level. But before we do that, I did say I was going to put a background in, didn't I? So I'm going to do that now. Alright, so let's click on background, the background layer. I have a sprite. Rather than change the color, better to put a sprite in. So I have one prepared already. I should say I have a picture, but I haven't created the sprite. So let's create a sprite. Let's call it background. SPR_BG, and let's import it. bg.png. Note it's the size of the room, and note the size of my room is okay. Here's the default thing. I don't know, maybe I could change this, but actually my sprite is 1024 by 768. And now it's centered. I'm going to make that a bit smaller so I can kind of see it. And I am going to choose the sprite for the background. So clearly I've made a mistake here. And I think it's possibly maybe 720 actually. No. So excuse me while I have a look at this. Bit of a technical hitch. 640. Okay, 1024 by 640. There you go. Can't have everything go right, can we? That wouldn't be real development. Alright, so now it's the right size. Right, so I need to click on level 1 and start creating a level. So I'm going to create like a super simple level so that this video is not super long and you can just see how to do it. And we'll create another tile layer as well. So you can understand that you might have tiles in the background, a tile layer in the foreground. So you might have like stars in the background. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do, because over here you might not be able to see, these are kind of starry kind of things. So I'm going to create these, and this is going to be my background tile layer. So I'm going to click on that and watch. Look, little starry effects here. I'm going to put them all over the place. Very random, because you want it to kind of look random. And there's another one here as well. I know this because obviously I've seen the sprite properly. Like when it's on this transparent background, you can't see that very well. Let's put a few random things here. Boom, 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 boom. I think that's enough. Now, let's put the moon in too. Because the moon's a bit small, but anyway. Should we have 2 moons? Should we have a double moon? No. So that's pretty much that layer. So let's create another layer and let's rename this one. Always name stuff well, because when you come back to it, you never can remember what you did. Level 1 sky, right? Now let's create a new one, and that's going to be above. So anything a layer above means it's more in front, right? More in the foreground. So instances will always be in the very foreground. Background will always be in the very back. So let's click on level 1, and which should already be clicked on. Create a new tile layer which appears above. Let's rename it level 1. Platforms. We may have a background and a foreground of platforms. I'm going to decide later on in the video. So I'm just calling it platforms. And you'll also notice that it's another tile layer different to this one. So you have to specify which tile set you're going to use. And this may give you a clue that you could have multiple tile sets in your asset browser, and you could use a completely different tile set for this level if you wanted to. So it's pretty flexible. Obviously we're going to use the same tile set, so we select the same one. But it's pretty awesome. I mean, you could have 2-3 different tile sets and create this really complex thing. So let's get on with it, because I need to show you the toolbar. It's not like you're dragging on sprites, which are like click, 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 and 1,000 clicks later, you've got a level. But this is like, this is cool, because I could fill my entire script. Right, so so you see the toolbar up here. So these are the things I would use: the pen, the eraser, the fill, the line. Generally I'll select tiles. Auto tile, we're not covering that today. That enables you to design a whole level literally in about 10 seconds. I'm not kidding. Edit tile inheritance, no, definitely not. Flip, these are all like if you want to move, if you want to just rotate stuff, which is quite useful, I guess. But we'll only be using the first 3 or 4. So I could fill the entire thing. So that's filling the whole thing. I could draw a line. I am actually going to draw a line. So watch this. So I hold my mouse down and look. I hold my left mouse button down and it's giving me a line. So I want a line. I want a few layers. I say layers. I just want a few lines here. This is going to be my ground. So the level's probably going to look really bad, but let's see how it turns out. And then I'm going to go boom, boom. And by the way, I'm not even going to talk about brushes. Brushes, you can get a whole bunch of tiles together and draw them on in one go. But you can do that anyway. You don't need brushes. The brushes you'd put down here, and then you could just select one, paint them on. But you don't need to do that. You can actually select multiple tiles anyway. So if I did this, look, so I could do, you know, something like that, and then, you know, something like this. It's a bit of a pain having this one there, isn't it? Something like that, which is not too bad. not too shabby. So yeah, I might as well keep that there. This one I will have, what will I have? What am I going to have at the top there? That one, maybe. No, this is what I'm not doing. Am I doing my line? Yeah, I am. Alright, so that's that. I'm thinking also that if I do select tiles and I select all those and I copy them, then I should be able to paste them. I'm probably not doing this too well. Okay, well, I might have to pass on that one. I'm pretty sure I can copy and paste these. Might have to come back to that one. I certainly could probably delete them. No, I can't even do that. It's kind of weird. I think that should be easier to figure out. Alright, let's leave select tiles for the moment. If you look up here, you've got this size thing. So if I had one tile and I wanted to make it a lot bigger, and I did size 1, 2, 3, 4, then it would actually be 4 by 4. So you could make one tile, paint huge areas very quickly, like that. We talked about fill. I'd like to be able to copy and paste this. So if you figure out how to do it, let me know and probably make your own video, which would be better than mine. I'm going to draw a few more platforms then, a few more things. And here's my level with tiles. So as you can see, it's a lot quicker producing something with tiles than it is with sprites. With sprites, if you did this with sprites, you'd have to have 7, 14, 21 sprites and 21 objects defined. So already your asset browser would be just chock full of stuff. Contrast that to what I've got. I don't have a single object yet. I have 2 sprites and 1 tile set. That's a way better way of doing it, if you can. and I would definitely encourage you to have a go. So what do you need to do? You need to go and find a tile set. You need to, the steps are create a background, create a sprite with your tile set as the sprite, then create a tile set using your sprite. Then you have your tile set done. Then in your room, create a layer. The layer is where you're going to paint your tiles from your tile set. Create a layer and assign your tile set to the layer. And then go into your room and click on your tile layer, and then you can start painting your tiles in. And remember, in your room editor, sorry, my dog is going nuts. Remember, you can drag on several tiles at once. You can make one tile bigger with the size. You can investigate brushes if you like. It's quite a good one. You can make use of the toolbar by using the pen, using lines, using fill, using the eraser. Selecting tiles. I'd love it if someone could actually find out how to use that properly. And that's pretty much it. Apart from auto tiling, which is a bit more advanced, it is actually super cool if you can do auto tiling. I may do a video on that. It's a little bit more complicated, but if you set up your tile set to auto tile, it just has to be laid out in a particular way that GameMaker likes. Then the developers have coded it so that if you lay out your tiles in a certain way, then the code works out which tiles have to go where, essentially. It's kind of like magic, but you can literally paint on an entire layer, an entire level in about 10 seconds. Seriously. So if you imagine, if you're doing one of these quick start games where you had a room, and then another room, another room, another room, you could knock out a bunch of levels super quick in minutes. Anyway, I'm rambling on now, so we're going to finish there. That was our first how-to on tile sets. I hope that was intelligible and made sense and was in some way, shape or form fun, and gave you some more knowledge with which to create your games. We'll see you in the next one.